Hey, everybody, welcome back to the reemergence of the NoBondsCast. It's been a few weeks, a few months since we launched episode. Very, very happy to get back. It's Friday. I've got my coffee. Most importantly, I've got someone very special here today, Ravia Tagavi. Ravia, probably the most official, unofficial person of the firm. What do I mean by that? Ravia is not officially an employee of Beck Bode, but she's been with Beck Bode probably one of the longest tenures of our independent firm, and just hugely additive to our daily conversations and our philosophy and how we communicate with the outside world. So anyway, great to see you, Ravia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Ben Beck. I'm the Chief Investment Officer, Managing Partner, Certified Financial Planner, Practitioner. I think you actually have to say it that way, Certified Financial Planner, Practitioner, that's the rules. A CFP, if you've heard of it. We've got 6 or 7 other of those at the firm, folks that are committed to working directly with individual clients, helping them plan for their future, invest for their future, and are committed to the industry, committed to having a level of expertise so that we can all put our clients in the best possible position forward. Robbie and I were talking the other day about something interesting that touches planning deeply. I don't know if you remember that, Robbie, but I think we were talking about how people make decisions.
Oh yeah, it was what compels someone to make a financial decision one way or another. I think that's what we were talking.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's an interesting one, because that's pretty deep in terms of I think we can all very easily just generally think about making decisions about finance as some sort of quantitative number. I want to do this, so I'm going to invest in this, or but how people make decisions is a pretty interesting topic. It makes me think of some of the conversations that I've had in the past with folks about questions that have come up from folks, and then you dig a little bit deeper of the source of those questions, and sometimes it's, well, my brother-in-law says, and he's a very successful CEO of XYZ company, and this is what he does. Which to me is like, okay, well, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Well, I don't know, but he's in the know. She's in the know. And our job, I think, as financial advisors, financial planners is, I mean, it sounds pretty simple sometimes, but eliminate a lot of that noise and focus on what a client, what someone really needs. And we can't get to what somebody really needs until we understand what's driving the decisions, right? Understanding their goals and objectives first before launching into an answer for a particular investment strategy that your brother-in-law or that your doctor was talking about as what he or she does. Everybody's different. There's no facts about the future, right? So let's entertain the notion that that worked in the past. Well, will that in fact work for you? Are we chasing something versus actually building a process and a plan towards something that's truly very important to you? That makes sense?
Yeah, it totally does. I'm just reminded of, when I first graduated from college, this was like 100 years ago. I really remember getting the sheet to make choices about my 401k.
Mm.
And I literally did, it's so cliche, but I asked the person in the cubicle next to me, hey, what did you pick? Right? I mean, like,
Right.
and I imagine that kind of thing happens still and more often than not. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. The other thing that I was thinking about, because I'm a recovering financial advisor. So
Right.
also 100 years ago, for 5 minutes, I was in this
All right.
work. And I think that a lot of firms say you've got to ask people about their goals and objectives, but how many advisors actually have the guts to really get into that question with people? Because it can be really uncomfortable. I mean, it's exciting and also potentially scary to ask people like, why are you spending this money this way anyway?
Mm.
Or investing this money this way?
Mm. Yeah.
Those are my two kind of
Stopping at the point of, well, what's your, retirement income? Okay. Yeah, sure. That's a goal. Funding college. Okay. That's a goal. But okay, well, that's fine, but that really doesn't answer many questions for us, right?
really doesn't.
It doesn't. Those are certainly perhaps milestones, or in the future that everybody knows what those two examples mean. But getting deeper into what is driving those decisions, and then more importantly, how somebody approaches their own money and what's truly the most important to them, is to me really the answers that we need to get to before we can really understand how we can be successful together, how the client can be successful. Because you and I have talked about this a lot, right? We can do all the candle burning at night and put together the flashiest, most polished plan in the world and have the best investment strategy in the world. But that pales in comparison to the work that we end up doing along the way, right? That to me is where the real work is done, because if we don't have an understanding of what's driving the decision making for somebody with respect to their money, we know that we as in you, me, and everybody else out there, being human beings, are just prone to make financial mistakes. We know that, and it's not exclusive to any particular person other than the fact that they're a human being, and we are emotionally charged human being, and where we encounter some sort of stimulus, good or bad, and it causes us to make a decision. And that decision, oftentimes when it comes to money, if there isn't a plan in place, if there isn't an understanding of, okay, what's really driving my decisions? And then, not for nothing, having another human being in your life as a relationship that understands, okay, I know you're going to face this in the future. You may not necessarily know that yet, but I know based on my experience that, hey, there's going to be some things that come up on maybe a fairly regular basis over the next 20 or 30 years that is going to cause you to consider, am I doing things the right way? Should I change? Ooh, should I do this? It's interesting. And I think a lot of our jobs
inside yourself, like as I can justify, I think we're all like this. We can justify our own decision making, right? We can always,
easily
we can
rationalize
everything.
away.
Yeah, we can rationalize everything. And so having that so often I don't know, I may not even know what it is that drives my own behavior, right? So I have it really to that point of having somebody there who can be like I don't know, some sort of like a litmus test for sanity.
Yeah, for sure. Can I
But
give
you
you an
have to
example?
trust them. You have to be able to trust them, because like anybody could say, oh yeah, I'll tell you, let me tell you, but
I'll give you a story. It actually happened yesterday. I met with a client, great person, been working together for quite a number of years, at least like 6 or 7 years. And has done very, very well in terms of the performance of the portfolio. And that's not a plug for us. That's just a fact of sticking to a strategy, in other words, for a longer period of time. And approaching retirement now. And we've had conversations along the way. Anytime the market goes through a hiccup, with conversations, well, geez, the question comes, are we staying the course, or do we need to change something, or so on? And that's been a common occurrence along the way, but the reinforcement over that time by me and by our staff of, look, that this is why we do it this way, because we know we're going to encounter these types of scenarios. And there's a number of goals out there that drives that, and for the client, but it came to a point with the turbulence that the market has withstood so far this year. Number of factors, nothing out of the ordinary considering what's going on. This time is not different, so to speak. And however, really, he was getting to a point where he is feeling that he needs to do something different, to the point of even leaving the firm. And this is exactly, to me, always a good reminder of checking in with folks and really working with them to understand, remind, reinforce the importance of a plan, and remind them of the fact that we are going to face these turbulent times, however temporary, turbulent times, often, not only leading up to retirement, but into retirement. And it reminds me too of the fact, again, we mentioned a minute ago, that at the end of the day, we're all human beings. So our major role, I think, as financial advisors, when it comes to your thoughts about decision making, I don't think human beings are in a way predictable. They're predictable in the sense of we are going to have trouble making decisions, but someone that I thought that was on the right path has had an extraordinary amount of success. All of a sudden, the switch has flipped, and having a lot of trouble as he enters retirement. And I think that is where in the past we've been successful at, this may be a little dramatic at times, by backing him away from the ledge in terms of making a poor decision in the past, which has allowed him and his family to benefit from the plan that we put in place. It's a reminder that we are always not that far from blowing it up. And it's really important, because there's so much, to me, in his defense, in anyone's defense, there's so much information coming at you every day today about what's happening and what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And there's a lot of bad actors out there in the media and otherwise that's just providing information that ultimately is not conducive or helpful to you achieving your goals. And getting at that decision making, to me, is so important. But this is a good example that I shared, I think, to me, of you can never rest easy as a financial advisor, because what might be right around the corner could take your client off that cliff and be a detriment to them achieving their goals in the future.
Yeah, that really, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, over the course of the years, we've worked together. One of the things that I work on consistently with clients is on fear. It's a favorite topic. It's also a favorite topic of mine. And
Sure.
I think that's, you can't power through it. You can't avoid it. It's just human. It's human. Fear is something that comes up all the time. And so this person that was, quote unquote, on track, right? At some point, it sounds like they just got scared again. Right. And it really takes a skilled advisor to be with a client through the fear of whatever it is that's activating them right now. Because
sure.
we know this time is not different. We know that, wars happen, recessions happen, all this
Right.
macroeconomic stuff happens, and it happens cyclically. But that's the kind of like, that's the mind knows that, but the body doesn't
Yeah.
remember that. And it's just like comes up again. But the
Yeah.
beautiful flip side of fear is that, so fear may hold us back sometimes, but then we have this desire, this longing, which is the dreams and goals and aspirations that bring people to financial advisors in the first place. So,
And right in the middle of that, right, is one of my favorite words that you commonly use is courage,
yeah.
right? It's courage for an investor to, the courage is okay, feeling those fears and understanding, right? The mind knows, I shouldn't do this. The body's saying, oh my God, run.
Yeah,
Right.
go away. Yeah.
And what is it that's preventing him or her from running is, I think, that courage. And that's what, as a financial advisor, that's what you hope you're building in someone as an investor as time goes along. We throw words around like trust and integrity and all these different things in the financial industry, but in my opinion, and that really what I mean by the vast majority of our work, actually, the vast majority of the value and the work that we do that's most beneficial to clients actually happens along the way. Yes, the plan that we put together in the beginning is crucial. And it's a fact that a well thought out plan probably doesn't need to be adjusted materially over time, unless there's something significant that happens. So there's a lot of work that goes in, right? From the point of what we call discovery, right? With someone that may become a client, where we really get a deep understanding of not only their goals, but what's the driving force behind those goals. And we do the work to create a plan that we think can be something that can best achieve those goals. And that is an amount of work for sure. But the real work happens, to me, along the way, and making sure, to the extent possible, that we're building that strength within them, that courage to, it's one thing to say, oh, I understand the markets go up and down on day one, right? When the markets aren't going down. but then money's accumulated along the way. Success is experienced, and time is ticking by. And then we go through a turbulent time. Maybe we're close to retirement. Maybe something's happened, and it just causes that feeling of an investor like kind of losing their stomach, right? That feeling of peering over that cliff.
Yeah.
It's one of our biggest and most important tasks as financial advisors. That's why I love that word that you use so much when we talk together. It's really courage. It's courage to execute and continually execute upon the plan that you as the investor worked so hard to put together with us.
Yeah. And it's also the advisor having the courage to hold you to it, to not appease your emotional ups and downs, right? To stay with you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's actually that's a really, really good point, because that does take courage from time to time, right? Is that I think, again, as human beings, we all, or a lot of us, have this inner need to put somebody at ease.
Yeah.
Right? Make someone comfortable, show empathy. And that can be hard to accept from a client who's experiencing a lot of turbulence, in terms of their portfolio, in terms of, oh my gosh, am I going to achieve this now? I thought we were on track, and now this happened, and so on. I agree. It does take an element of courage on our end. Now that you say that, a pretty significant amount, to stand that line to make sure that I understand and show and try my best to show that empathy towards someone and help them see past, the negativity that they're hearing in the markets or the dollar amount in their statement on a given month, and recommend and counsel on something that's not necessarily preferable to them right now, personally, right?
Yeah. I think in the long term, it's funny to use the word empathy. It may not feel like it in the moment when the advisor is saying don't sell. From a client's point of view, it may seem like, oh, my advisor just wants me to stay the course because, they want my money, right? Or something like that, or whatever. They may feel like there's a transaction in play here.
Sure.
But really, in the long term, having the client not do things in reaction to the market, and helping the client stay the course may be the most compassionate thing, the most empathetic thing that a financial advisor can do. And it's hard. So, I mean, both of these parties are human beings, and both of them are subject to emotion. It's not like one is, exempt in some way from that. It's not just the client that gets emotional, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We've totally drifted off our topic, by the way, which was why we give you your money.
Yeah, pull us back. Yeah, that's right. Why do you give us, or why do you give people your money?
Yeah. Well, I was wondering if you could maybe, as a kind of a brief pause here, talk about, you mentioned some words: trust, integrity, blah, 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 all the things that a lot of financial advisors say to clients, right? You trust me, I have integrity. Maybe you could talk about what are the questions that a financial advisor needs to be able to answer for a client, like absolutely.
For sure, right. So there's obviously so many that come to mind that I find that are impactful, that are definitely useful to get answers to. But I think that ultimately, going through a plan, going through a process, that process ultimately has to be encapsulated in a philosophy going forward, right? And it's actually a philosophy that's not necessarily based just upon investments that fund a plan, right? But you can apply these questions to a lot of facets of your life, I think. And for us, when you're making decisions about your money, we've really narrowed it down to three. What we've talked about that. We obviously talked about this. Relatively basic questions that seem to be really hard to answer for a lot of folks in our industry. Yeah. And that is, what do you buy? Okay, I'm going to give you my money. I'm going to make a decision with my money. What do we buy? Probably the easiest, I think, or the one that's people frequently do not have a problem answering, if that's the case. When do you sell? So you've bought something, and over a period of time you've owned it. When do you sell? When is the point at which that you are going to move out of this investment into something else? Is it forever? In other words, you're going to own something forever? Is it when it goes up to some arbitrary amount, which is meaningless to a certain extent, it's irrelevant. So when is that? And then when you do sell something, if you do sell something, where do you reinvest the proceeds? Now there's a question. All these questions, in our humble opinion, have to be answered before you even get started, right? Otherwise, you just mentioned a moment ago the word reactive versus proactive, right? What in anything in our lives, what's usually the outcome if we're reactive? Usually not very good, right? Or at least not optimal, right? Not optimal. If I'm not paying attention to my children, and then something happens, they drop a glass that they're not supposed to be carrying into the living room or whatever, and reactively I yell at them, right? okay, that solves nothing, right? Solves absolutely nothing for us. It's an outpouring of emotion, and it does nothing to prevent them from falling into that again, right? Versus being proactive and doing things to make sure that that doesn't happen, or that they understand the consequences of dropping a glass and stepping on the glass or what have you. So I really can't right now come up with a scenario of being reactive that actually turns out to be positive in any facet of my life. So why is it then that when it comes to the planning and investment world, that most of everything is reactive? A lot of what we see is reactive. We look at past information to make decisions about how we're going to invest. That's reactive.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. I don't, I'm not going to go through the tough aspects of planning and actually having a deep conversation with advisor. I'm just going to follow what my brother-in-law's doing, because he's very successful. That's reactive. And it's perhaps a departure of sorts from taking responsibility, right? It's hard. It's hard to sit down and have a conversation with someone when you don't have a great frame of reference. You mentioned the word trust. You have to trust that person. That's hard, because I do believe trust is earned along the way. It's not something that's just evident from day one, and then somebody has to demonstrate that to you. And I think a lot of it is the demonstration of being there with you and listening and hearing you and being present to what's most important to you, and then being proactive in terms of how you need to proceed going forward, knowing, fully understanding that might not be the most popular thing to hear. I want my money safe, for example. I want to protect. No, actually, we need to be proactive, engage in a philosophy and a strategy going forward, and we're going to experience volatility along the way. And the trade-off for that volatility are returns that we feel that are going to best get you to your goals, versus being safe, quote unquote safe.
Right. So bringing it back to, like, why do people give advisors money? What motivates them? You're mentioning the very kind of intentional approach of having a goal, having objectives, working with somebody methodically. And how often do you see people just showing up because they want more, and don't really connect the more with anything that they want in their lives? Like, how often does that happen? Or maybe it doesn't.
I think that, not with everybody, but I think at certain points of, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but in certain points of my life, right? In anybody's life, I think certainly there's the trap, or you always have the opportunity to fall into a pattern of reaching for more. My wife just showed me an article that she really liked this morning, that she was reading about your home and the peace of mind that comes from eliminating the clutter and simplifying. And the gist of the article was, rather than focusing so much of having all the perfect things in each room and so on, but simplifying and really focusing on what's going to make me happy in this particular space. What do we actually need in this space that provides the most amount of comfort and the less amount of stress, and removing everything else. And that was about, that article was about decorating a home in a sense, but I find a lot of parallels in the sense of just your own finances and your own goals and objectives of what is it that is going to make us the most fulfilled. And that right there, Ravi, to me is the beautiful aspect of digging deeper with someone as you're building a relationship with a potential client or a client, about getting a deeper answer about what's driving them towards these goals. That's the difference between retirement income and taking that at face value versus digging a little bit deeper. Why is it that you want to retire it? Because I want freedom, right? I want that feeling of independence. I want to be able to know that I have enough money so that I can take that trip with my spouse to watch my child play lacrosse down at college, or that I can attend whenever I want, my son's or daughter's concert at Juilliard, or whatever it is. And that to me is getting more towards what the driving force is, where you don't understand as a financial advisor, you don't understand really what's behind that answer of retirement income unless you have the courage to push and to dig deeper. And not every person is ready or willing, or maybe the timing is off to be able to share that with you.
Yeah.
And that comes to, I coming in a roundabout way to answering that first question about getting to a point with somebody is important, but understanding that someone has to be willing to share and also receive advice for it to be effective. And so often, you asked a moment ago about so often, or every so often, we meet with somebody and immediately the conversation goes to performance and things of that nature. That's a total removal of what we think the most important thing is, which is the goals and objectives and what's driving you.
Yeah. And you back to trust again. I think trust is demonstrated through consistency, and that means being able to just be with the client for some time without expecting that on the first meeting they're going to bare their souls to you. I mean, some people are ready, they're ready
Right.
to do that, and some people are not, and it just takes some time to be able to share that. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it does. Maybe like I meet you and I instantly feel like I can tell it. I'll tell you everything.
I think that happens though, right? I mean, that certainly happens. I've had experiences, whether it's non-financial. I mean, you meet somebody the first time and you just click like that. And it feels like you've known them forever, right? Not to sound cliche, but I feel like, I grew up with this person, my neighbor, and I instantly, quote unquote, trust this person. And maybe they trust me before I've earned it, right? Before I've demonstrated the willingness to quantify what you just said, be there along the way, right? And that works, right? Because if you're a trustworthy person, you're going to be there and you're going to, but of course we meet with all different types of people that are no less deserving of help because they're showing up and so they've acknowledged that, okay, I need the help. But getting them to a point where they acknowledge I need the help and I want the help and I'm willing to take these steps, however baby steps at first or large steps, to open up a little bit about, okay, what is it that's bothering me, or what issues do I have, or what are the dreams that I need to be able to connect the dots on. Yeah, it happens at all different speeds with all different types of people. Ultimately though, I feel as a financial advisor, it's almost impossible to help someone effectively and without their meeting us halfway in terms of being able to take those steps.
Yeah, I mean, you always use this, not to say that what you guys do is in any way, shape, or form like medicine, but medicine is a great analogy for this. Like, it's as if I were to go to a doctor and go, well, I'm here, but I'm not going to tell you what's wrong with me.
Right.
This is just not going to work, right?
Yeah. And nor, right? Good analogy. And nor is the doctor going to spend an inordinate amount of time, or maybe any time at all, trying to convince you that you need something, right? Doctor does his or her job, certainly, of diagnosing, analyzing, what's wrong with you, diagnosing or recommending. And doctors are human beings too, right? So if a doctor says, hey, Ben, I think you're on a path here where taking a look at your blood pressure and your blood work and everything, and you've talked to me a little bit about your eating habits and this and that, I think you're on the tough path health-wise, and you need to make these changes, A, B, and C. And that's what you need to do. Does the doctor then spend an inordinate amount of time trying to convince the patient, right, on doing this? Now, doctors are human beings, right? So it's like, oh, person's not going to do it. They may feel bad. There may be some emotion involved, but that doctor has as we do on the financial end, that doctor has a large waiting room of folks that have ailments, to your point, are willing to share what's bothering them or what they think they have an issue with, and is open to accepting the advice to better their lives. And we don't spend any time convincing folks. I am a human being, though. It's like I meet with somebody, I'm like, wow, they really need our help. I can tell right from the get-go. But if they're not willing to share their ailments or take the necessary steps, we can't help.
But you can't want it more for people than they want it for themselves. And we talk about this all the time.
For sure.
You can't want
For
it.
sure.
Yeah.
That's hard, though.
It is hard. It is hard. I think, if I were to say the ailment with a capital A, the ailment, it sounds like the ailment is reactivity. Like, I would imagine the reasons why somebody would seek financial advice, whether it's from a legitimate financial advisor or their brother-in-law or the person in the cubicle next to them, is because they either want to chase something that's going up or they want to avoid something that's going down. So they're in some state of reactivity.
For sure.
Very few people, there are people, but very few people wake up in the morning and go, oh, today I have to go get myself a financial plan so that I'm on the right track to be.
That's right. I had this epiphany, right?
It's like I just woke up
this morning, and it's like, and I relate that to, there's this great athlete, big CrossFit athlete. And I remember a few years ago, he had posted on Instagram or one of the social media channels his 3-year plan. And he said, I'm gonna, finish in the top 10 in the CrossFit Games 2024. Maybe it was 21 at the time or something. I looked at that, was so interesting because, when we think about goals and objectives and so on, I think we all quantify that sometimes it's like getting that now. I want that now. I want to achieve, and likewise, I want to see that progress now. And again, the conversation we had a moment ago about reactivity versus proactivity, the most important things that we want to achieve don't necessarily happen immediately, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's financial, but in this case, he understood that in his own mind, towards reaching for more and having so much more and having it now, the importance of setting achievable goals and being proactive about those goals to say, I need to see this level of improvement and consistent improvement versus stepping on the gas pedal as much as I can right now to achieve something in 6 months. And I thought that was impactful especially for someone in their early to mid 20s, this gentleman was, to actually have the maturity to say, yeah, I want to have 2 million, instead of saying I want to have 2 million Instagram followers tomorrow because I achieved this, and this in the area of fitness, and had the maturity to say, I'm going to go back to the wood shop, so to speak. And I'm going to grind away little by little at all the things that I need to get better on. And I'm acknowledging that it's not going to happen tomorrow. So I'm going to put away all the noise, and I'm going to set a goal of something that I do think is achievable, which is 3 or 4 years from now. And if I put in the time, and if I seek out the right people to help me, and if I am committed to the consistency of being proactive in showing up every day, it's going to happen. And it did, by the way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what, I'm thank you for bringing that up, because that's, it made me think about all the different things in our lives where it's like, I want that. All right. Do I step in the gas pedal and just try to make that happen right away? Or do I formulate a mature approach to putting myself in the best possible position to achieve it?
Yeah. I'm just going to shamelessly plug here and say, this guy may be a genius and he figured it out on his own, but chances are he probably had a good coach. So or good coaches along the way.
Yeah.
And as in fitness, as in diet, as in anything that is long-term, where the goal is long-term. So with finances too, you really need to have a good coach, and you got to be, you got to do your research, find the right person, but at some level you also have to be lucky to just land with someone who gets you and who's willing to stick with you for the duration of the work, right? It's just like
and be coachable.
And be coachable.
Right. That's, not to be corny, but that's how I view our role. We use the word financial advisor or wealth manager. Ultimately, we're coaches. I come from an athletic background. So does Jim Bode. So does a lot of folks in our organization.
Yeah.
And not that you have to be we have former teachers. We have, the main idea here is that we have a lot of folks that are or have been in positions of helping folks achieve and being in a position to offer insight and perspective along the way. And that's really what we are. Often we get classified as investment gurus, right? It's irrelevant.
It is. It really,
it's irrelevant.
It really is.
It's important on one hand, and equally so it's irrelevant, right? Because if you have the right plan in place and you have a coach that understands, I'm not saying you're going to win the CrossFit Games, but I understand what it's going to take to get you to that opportunity, to be able to have an opportunity to shine. Then the training plan is the training plan.
Yeah.
It's not a magic exercise that's going to, oh my gosh, put you head and shoulders above anybody else. No, it's the work along the way, and it's the perspective, and it's the coaching, and so on.
Yeah.
Same here.
It is. I know that from knowing you guys for so many years, I know a lot of folks are into fitness, but having met just about everybody that's been at this firm from day one when they started, I know that even those who are not athletic, all are committed to discipline. This is why discipline is one of the values of the firm. So, for the handful of folks who are not into fitness, or however many there are, they're disciplined in other ways in their lives. And I think it's really important to have that be part of a culture, so that clients understand that this isn't just, I'm not just telling you to be disciplined, I'm disciplined myself. Like you can't be a student or a good teacher, or have a coach who hasn't actually done it themselves and just sidelines telling you, just listen to what I say. So I appreciate that.
Discipline's a great word, and with that come, and what I'll want to paraphrase what you said as demonstrate, right?
Yeah.
Right, and finance, of course, fitness and health, family, but also fourth F, no less important, probably the most important, is faith, right? And how we, many of us at the firm, are committed to our faith in terms of, and part of this like training plan, right? Now, whether or not you go to church every Sunday or not is beside the point, but committed to your faith of in demonstrating that this is something that's important to me. This is something that's important to my soul. And so much so that just like a training plan or just like a financial plan, making a commitment as a family to have, whether it's every Sunday or however you practice your faith, that's another level of commitment and discipline in a large part of your life as well. That's a big part of our firm.
Yeah. And when you say faith, I mean, I don't even think about it in terms of whatever shape it takes. I think about believing in something I can't necessarily see or touch or smell or hear, right? Believing, which ultimately, like a long-term goal, one has to have faith, because you don't know if it's going to work out, right? All you can do is hope, do some constructive move towards it step by step, and you'll either get there or you won't, but you have to believe. And I think believe is a word that comes up a lot in our work together, is that you've got to believe, because retirement, for example, is one of those things where you don't get a second chance. There's no do-overs with retirement, right?
Sure.
It's like you don't get to, like, oh, screw it up the first time 30 years later and go, I'm going to try this thing again. So it does require a plan. It does require faith, and it requires really, really good guidance and a coach that'll take you there.
For sure. Yeah. Remember that the retirement income is the goal. And then we dig deeper and it's like, I need that freedom. Retirement to me is not so much I hate my job, I want to retire. It's getting to a point in my life, whether it's 10 years from now or 15 years from now, where I have that freedom and independence to do the things that I really endeavor to do with my family, whatever shape that takes. To your point, you have to believe now that is achievable, right? And then you have that belief. Then the next step is, what pieces can I put in place to make that the highest probability of achievement? Because this is so incredibly important to me. Whereas the flip side of that, as we talked about, is, do you really believe that it's achievable if you're taking that right now, again, and just trying to put the pedal to the metal and achieve everything all at once? And I think that as human beings, emotional creatures, that's what we can fall victim to. And without a good coach to keep you on that pathway, it can be really difficult. But working with folks as I have, as we have for quite a while now, and to see things evolve and work out financially and otherwise is really rewarding and fulfilling. And that's why we're here. That's why I think any coach coaches, right? Why would you coach somebody? Because it's really fulfilling to see that value of the work, the perspective, the direction, the maturity, everything that goes into everything you can impress upon someone else. And help is a pretty simple sounding word, but helping them along that path that maybe without that help, they don't get there, or they don't get as far. That encapsulates everything that it is for me in this industry. That has nothing to do with a stock or a mutual fund or this, right? It's everything to do with the impact that you can have with someone.
Yeah. You know what I love about this whole conversation is that we really didn't talk about anything investment-y.
That's true. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Investment-y. I think that's a word too.
It's a word. It's a word. It's a word.
Yeah.
But and to your point, like most of the real work is really of a different kind. It's like on another level. Yes, investments are very important, and they do show up because they are what fuel the plan. But
right.
Everything else is about dreams and aspirations and motivations and all the other realities.
For sure. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah, nothing we talked about was investment related today, right? So that probably should tell everybody listening something.
I
Right?
hope
I hope
so.
so. Yeah.
I hope so, yeah.
So,
Well,
it's been
it's the
fun.
end of our time almost.
Right. So, well, thank you. It's great to kick this off again, but more so, it's great to kick this off again with you. I'm looking forward to future NoBondsCasts, where we may get a little investment-y along the way, right? To talk a little bit about what's important to us when it gets to that point. But NoBondsCast, we're here to make impact with folks that really have these dreams and goals they want to achieve. Beck Bode, we are on social media. You can find us at Beck Bode or beckbode.com. We're all Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, what have you. But really looking forward to continuing the NoBondsCast next week and having a great time doing it with you, Rabia. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This was super fun, and see you next week. Take care. Bye.